Well, guys, a big hello and a very, very good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to this Sales Geek and Air Marketing Group podcast. Podcast live, actually, flipping out. This is a new one. So I'm delighted to have Owen on with us today. Owen, do you just want to give everybody a bit of an overview as to who you are and what you do within the sales industry at the moment? I like that. You got the good and the bad bit in and the sins bit in there. That was very nicely dropped in there. Quite in line with what we're going to be talking about today. So I thought before we started, guys, I'd give you a bit of an overview as to how I met Owen. So I'd seen Owen on, I think, the ISM website. He'd done some of the judging for the Institute of Sales Management before. And I invited Owen onto a podcast that we were doing, the Sales Geek podcast on the Hub, and was just blown away. We had such a good time. I think it was possibly one of the longest podcasts that we've ever done. I think it was about hours long. They're only about 30 minutes, something like that, but we just carried on, and the relationship's just grown from there. So been very, very much looking forward to doing this today with Owen. The theme of today, I'm sure you've all seen, is all around the 7 deadly sales sins that issues that we suppose we see within people's pipelines. So I was looking through the 7 sins, or the 7 biggest sins, I think, these were from biblical times, which was lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride, and then started trying to put those into a sales context. But Owen and I were having a bit of a conversation before about what we see the biggest issues and biggest challenges people have in keeping their pipelines flowing and bringing business in at the moment. And the first one that we came up with was a lack of discipline. And this is, I think, something that we see quite a lot across different departments. Salespeople or sales teams don't have that lack of discipline. I mean, how do you guys come over the discipline element of doing the same things over and over, Owen? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not sure. I've got people saying I can hear Owen, and I've got other people saying that I can't hear Owen. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Still no sound from Owen. We both seem to be on there. So let's. I've just lifted the volume up a little bit. So just try that. I'll keep an eye on the chat anyway, but we'll carry on.
Yeah, keep an eye on the chat. So yeah, coming back to the discipline point, I think it's about process. It's about process and common understanding, and then the individual following that process and being accountable against that. So sales leaders looking at reviews and performance reviews, not just again on that end result, but on the process being followed, and are we improving that process at all times.
And I've got to say, I mean, discipline for me, I'm an absolute nightmare when it comes to being disciplined. If I don't get in the morning and think about doing a certain amount of things, and the easiest way I've come through this and come across it is in the morning I make the to-do list, your standard 1 to 10 to-do list. And I think what I did in the start of my career was, my issue was that I'd make a to-do list and I'd start working just from top to bottom, rather than actually looking at where the priorities are going to be that day. And I think it's Jim Rohn who talks about don't major in minor things. And I spent a heck of a lot of my time majoring in minor things, really looking after those very small deals that were never going to go anywhere, or making brews was one of my favourite things. Anyone want a brew in the office? Running around making sure everyone's got enough caffeine, rather than keeping an eye on my own sales figures. And that's one thing for me that has made a massive, massive difference in my figures, and looking at the sort of deal values that we're doing, is making sure that I'm putting my time effectively into that pipeline, and really knowing where everything's up to, but what it needs to be pushed forward, and in the order that I'm going to do that in that day. And I mean, Air, you've got such a massive team. How do you go about managing that sort of stuff?
Look, I think a lot of it comes down to leaders and having the right leaders in place, and again,
Yeah.
process. Part of it's about being selfish as well. I would talk about good strikers. I love the sporting analogy. So if anyone doesn't like sport, probably turn off now. Apologies. But if you think about a good striker, salespeople have to be both the people that create the opportunities and the assists and the strikers at the same time. And that's really difficult. So that automatically means it's a difficult job. But you've got to take your chances. And I think being in the right place at the right time. Back to your point about making selections. Be selfish. I could work on this deal that's making loads of noise over here, or I could work on this one that actually is making less noise but is more important. We make conscious and subconscious decisions at every minute of every day. And it's how good you are at making those decisions around where you spend your time and what you do next that determines the result a lot of the time. And I think, that's an art, it's a skill, it's something that you have to practice. So, there is no perfect way, but I would say conscious compromise is a really important point. I
Yeah.
know I'm not going to work on that deal today, even though it's on my to-do list, but I'm conscious that that's
Yeah.
a smaller opportunity than that one, or that one's more important for me to hit my quarter goals instead of my monthly goals. This might get me to my monthly goals, but that deal needs my time, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's a bigger impact on my quarterly goals. It's just about being able to take yourself out of the moment and make conscious decisions. There is always compromise, and you're just doing that with awareness.
And I think one of the things we get asked for this quite a lot, but when you're looking at a pipeline, or we'll go into a business and we'll start analysing pipelines and start looking at what's going on in people's pipelines, and there's always that question: what should I be doing? Where should I be spending my time? Is that on prospecting? We're salespeople. We need to go out and find new business, or should we be focusing on account management, or should we be looking at following up on people and making sure we're doing enough follow up for people? And for me, this always comes back to what you said at the start about having that process in place and being to analyse the different steps in that process. Because the way that, I always break it down is if I've got 10 deals in my pipeline at the moment that I know I need to get across the line, they're all good deals, I've qualified, I know we're going to talk about qualification quite a lot, but I've done that effectively. The time needs to be spent on those deals to get them across the line rather than prospecting. But what we often find, and I think I did this a lot in my career previously, was that you're on this Loch Ness sort of sales monster, and it's just going up and down because you're either prospecting loads, you've got loads in your pipeline, and then you start focusing on getting those things across the line rather than focusing on prospecting. And there's a real discipline there, I think, in making sure that we're using our time effectively on both of those things.
Yeah, it's segmentation of time. It's understanding that you can't do one and be successful. You have to do them all and do them all well and consistently. There's a couple of things I'd say to that. One is there's huge value in knowing your numbers. So if you know that 50% of deals that get to the fifth stage in your sales cycle, which is the last one, the penultimate one, the one before close, then you can be darn sure that at least one or two is going to close. You ought to spend some time there. If it's 1 in 7, you're probably not being efficient at that stage. So spending time there probably doesn't make it as much sense. They probably already made their mind up by that point. But I'd also, so it's about segmenting time and putting time out for prospecting, time out for
Yeah.
middle of funnel, time out for close. And I always say, if you look at the most important thing of a day, it's always going to be closing off on the closest thing to getting over the line, right? We're human. That's the reality. Sometimes it might not be in the prospect's mind. I'm not ready to make that decision today. I've got to talk to that person next Tuesday. So anytime I'm spending on that, unless it's value add, I'm giving value, I'm offering something. If it's just chasing, is a wasted time. So actually, that's not the best place I could be today. But I think naturally, it's fair to forgive a salesperson for wanting to spend time there. But I think the next important thing we typically see in salespeople is the next one before that, and they kind of work backwards. My view is the most important thing is the ones that are about to close. The next most important thing is top of funnel. The bit in the middle is the least important, because top of funnel makes sure you've always got the traffic coming in and the volume coming in, providing you do it in the right way. The close piece, you've kind of done all the hard work. The bit in the middle, there should be a process for that. A day here, a day there probably doesn't matter quite as much. But if you leave prospecting another day, you never get that day back. You lose that top of funnel. And if you miss that close opportunity because of timing, you miss it. They're all important, but that's how I tend to work.
So here's a key one, and I'd really like to get your opinion on this, because obviously you own a business that runs the marketing side of things. You also own a business that runs the sales prospecting side of things. And we often, it depends on the sort of business and sort of industry that you work in, but there seems to be sometimes this idea from salespeople, or the way that the process is set up, that marketing provide the leads. They go outbound to the sector, bring the leads in, we handle the leads and get them through to fruition. So from your side, obviously you've got an organisation that does marketing, does that lead generation, a lot of digital channels there. What's your view on which is the best route to market? Because we get asked this a lot. Should we be spending our time converting clients that have shown an interest, or should we be spending our time going out to new clients that might have an interest that are in our target audience?
The answer is always both. The answer is always both. So there isn't a better way, because the reality is channels change over time. Buying processes change, buyer behavior changes. Look at this year. People were making decisions one way in February, and the very next month it was completely different. Search traffic dropped by 20% in some industries. So if you were only looking at search or one channel or online or digital as an option, and you had no proactive outbound,
Absolutely.
Suddenly, technically, your inbound opportunities were going to drop by potentially 20%, assuming the quality of that traffic was still the same. And what, you're going to sit and accept that? So I don't think there's ever a time where one is better than the other. Some will perform, and it will be industry and sector and average order size related, in so much as outbound will always probably cost more on a cost per acquisition. They'll have slower sales cycles, but it's more scalable, it's more controllable. Demand gen inbound is very reliable on other things that are out of your control. You might get shorter sales cycles, but you have less control over who comes to you. And there's always a ceiling with digital and demand. There's only so much you can do. So there isn't that one's better than that one in my view. I think any business that doesn't adopt both is missing an opportunity for sure.
Absolutely. And the best metaphor I ever heard, I can't remember who did this one, but they said to me, it's like when you go out on a fishing boat and you've got two options when you go out on your fishing boat. You can either throw a net over and just see what you get pulled up, or you can go out with that harpoon and really go after those specific things that you're trying to find, rather than just netting all of those together. And in my opinion, I've always thought the best salespeople are also the best marketeers. And this is sometimes scorned upon. We're in sales, we don't do marketing. But the best salespeople, in my opinion, some of the biggest deals that we've won at Sales Geek haven't been necessarily ones that we've gone outbound to find. I haven't cold called, we haven't reached out to that person specifically. But over a course of 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, they've seen what we're doing on LinkedIn. And there's been some sort of trigger there. It might have been an inquiry, it might have been a comment, it might have been something which we wouldn't have got without doing all that marketing. And there's a big difference between, for people talk about social selling and seem to put into all of that category. If I'm putting content out onto LinkedIn, I'm social selling. And there's a huge debate, is it better to be social selling or cold call? It's forever raging on. But I know that you guys do a real mixture of those particular things. But I think that's been one of our strengths as a business, is making sure that we've always got those two things. When COVID hit, it meant that we still had some warm stuff coming in. People at that point who might not have normally reached out, when we've decided to pivot and change the business a little bit. Pivot seems to be the word of the moment. That everybody seems to be pivoting everywhere. I don't know whether it's just people going around in circles, but it seemed to be a big strength for us. And also, for me and my pipeline as an individual, bringing business in for Sales Geek, it's definitely been a big asset. I mean, how do you do that at Air? Which parts of that do you make sure that you're focusing on? Obviously, you've got a great outbound team, but from a marketing perspective, what do you guys think is important?
Do you know, it's interesting. You talked about the salesperson and the content behind it. Your outbound gets easier if you're doing better marketing, because, of course, as part of the outbound process, people look at your website, they look at your collateral, they look at your content, they do due diligence to decide whether they want to meet with you. And I can't tell you that the number of opportunities, particularly where we're representing clients who are in early stage and maybe haven't got the maturity of those sorts of things yet, our call will prompt a conversation about maybe there is an opportunity there, maybe there's something I need to look at, maybe I have got a pain point that I need to address there. They'll go and do the due diligence, they'll look at the collateral and not be convinced by it. Hey, that person is unlikely or far less likely to get that opportunity, that appointment, that deal opened than they would have been if that collateral had been pretty darn convincing. So they both play a really important role. And I'm kind of dodging the subject to a degree. And I think if I had to pick one, I would always go sales over marketing, because I guess I've spent longer on sales and I feel more in control with sales. I think I know that I can pick up the phone. I know that X% of my phone calls are going to result in a conversation with a human being who has some kind of influence on the decision. And I know that I can back myself that X% of those are going to, if I'm phoning the right kind of companies and I've profiled them properly and I've got the right kind of process, and whether I integrate email and all those sorts of things is another discussion. But I know that I can convince a percentage of those, whatever that might be, to say yes to something. I can control that. I can forecast it. I can build metrics around it. I can scale it. I can repeat it. marketing tends to be far more unpredictable at times. But I think it's about doing enough of the right stuff on both to allow that unpredictability to be absorbed by all the predictability that's in everything else in your process. So, if I pick one, I'll always pick sales. I think that's just who I am and what we've built our business off of. But I'd be lying if I said that we built our outsourced SDR top of funnel agency by doing proactive outbound in isolation. We didn't. The PPC is one of our best channels. Our LinkedIn profile, I'll give you an example. In the last 3 months, I have a sales team that onboard our clients, but I've had 4 or 5 clients sign contracts. I don't handle any inbound inquiries through marketing, through the website, that sort of stuff. I don't do any outbound myself. They've just come through referrals, and 9 times out of 10, they've seen content on LinkedIn from the company. They know someone I know. They've reached out to me personally. That's not proactive sales. That's inbound, and it's referral, but it's led. Those referrals come and are supported by our marketing and our content and our collateral, all the stuff and all these conversations we're doing today. And people go, I've got to go and have a conversation with them and explore it. So, there is no right answer other than you need to be doing it all.
And on the marketing side of things, I think there's often this view that marketing is something that we need to turn on and turn off. And with PPC and things, you can do that now. You can turn PPC on, get a load of leads through from it. But the sort of stuff that we see on LinkedIn and you see that salespeople doing self-promotion or self-promotion of the company, for me, it's an infinite thing, because you might have 5,000 followers that you've got that are looking at you constantly. They might all be your perfect target audience. Imagine you've added all of those 5,000 people because they're your perfect target audience. Just because you're putting good content out now doesn't mean they're going to need you now. And we often find that a lot of our inquiries that come through on LinkedIn are from people who've never liked, never commented, never shared. We might have been connected for a while, but we've never really engaged. But something's happened at their end, and they've gone, now is the time for me to reach out. And someone said, how can you quantify how much you get from doing your social marketing? I said, we can't quantify it. It's one of those things that you can't quantify. You can see how many leads you're getting in and things, but I can't quantify what effect it's doing. But I'd rather be doing it than not doing it. I can guarantee that, because we do get opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's to a certain degree, it's blind faith, isn't it? You just have to trust the process. And you can look at metrics like website traffic and returns and page views and time on site and all those sorts of things to give you some indications. But sales you look at sales conversations. We have outbound sales conversations for our clients who are more likely to convert because they know the brand. They're more likely to know the brand if you're doing more marketing. So sales will take complete credit for that conversation because I phoned them, I cold call them, they wanted to meet with you and they're buying from us. Hey, sales has done a great job. But what we're not doing is attributing any of that back to brand awareness, demand gen, marketing strategy, that sort of stuff. And equally, marketing will generate an inbound lead and won't mention the fact that they've had three cold calls over the last year. It's the nature of business. It's just the way it goes. But I'll stand by all of it. Businesses need to adopt both. And I think if you've got a small budget and you only pick one, I think that's an industry and situation specific thing. But if you can afford to, I'd rather do both reasonably well than try and focus all my attention on one in isolation.
Oh, absolutely. And I always feel like there's this idea now that everything has to be done through digital marketing or it has to be done through social media. For us, 100%, one of the best routes to market is cold calling. Francesca does a lot of cold calling for us. She's constantly on the phone and she brings in a huge amount of leads and a huge amount of business to us. One, because we can be really specific about who we're going out to. When you are marketing, you do get inquiries through the website. You can do a bit of research, but you're never quite sure what they're going to be like. But you can do that research beforehand. You can find those people. And I've got to say, and people may disagree, guys, you lot who are listening, I would love to hear your comments on this. I don't think cold calling has been easier than it is at the moment. Owen, I'm going to go to you on that one. What do you think about that comment?
I think it will vary depending on who you talk to in our team. Don't get loads of people coming in with amazing expectations. So here's the thing, right? It works. There's no question mark. It works. If your target market right now is C-level HR decision makers, trust me, I think people will probably be disagreeing with you because it's very difficult to get them on the phone if all you're doing is pure cold calling. If you're If you're describing cold calling as using other channels as well as cold calling, then okay, fair enough. That might help your chances. And I think most people recognize that one tool, one channel in isolation is never going to work as well as adopting multiple channels or multiple tools. I think if you're looking at conversation to conversion, so decision maker conversation through to saying yes to something, we're running pretty well at the moment, and that's because there's a lot of trigger points for people. There's a lot of things that have changed, and that creates decision making. That means that decisions have to be made, things have to be reviewed, and of course when you're selling you rely on things being reviewed. That's changed, so I need to do something different. Mediocrity, status quo isn't good for salespeople, because everything's going okay means I don't really need to change anything. Things are going really well means I've got to change something, because that means extra demand, the business is going to look different. Things are going really terribly, I've got to do something different. When it's just doing okay, we tend to just sit in our comfort zone and don't make decisions on things, and that's a disaster for salespeople. So I think there's an element of truth in what you're saying from where I sit. It's definitely got slightly easier to find people who are in buying mode, and therefore we're able to convert yeses from conversation more, but it's definitely got harder to get people on the phones if all you're doing is pure cold calling. And to give some metrics on that, month to month, our contact rates, so cold call dialed through to connect with a decision maker, tended to run 10 to 12%, and that's across 40-50 concurrent campaigns going after everything from C-level to SME business owners, mid-level management. And the range is fairly huge in there. In April, that got down to 3 to 5% across the averages in sort of March, April, May time. So, it was a big drop, and that's back up to 7-8% at the moment across the average of the account the last couple of months, and it's creeping back up. So, it is harder to get people on the phones if you're making cold calls right now. Let's not beat around it. That's true. So cold calling is not necessarily as good right now, but I think it is once you get somebody on the phone.
I talk about at the very start of lockdown, there was a golden period. There was a 2-week golden period where everybody in all companies had been gone. You all have to work from home now. And there was this bit of a disarray around when you rung with the reception desk. It was like, can I speak to the VP of sales at Oracle? Yes, of course. Here's his mobile number. He's working from home today, or she's working from home today. There was a 2-week golden period there before everybody sorted everything out and went, no, you're not having those mobile numbers anymore. That's not happening. And the one thing that we've definitely found, and you'll have the stats behind this, so I'll be really interested to pick your brains on it, but we've found that our sales process, again, from what you're talking about there, has massively got quicker. Converting people has never been quicker now than we've ever had it before, and I think that's one of 2 reasons. One is people have to be reactive in the decision making, but I think 2, for us, technology has sped up that decision making process so much more quicker, because people aren't having to just meet at the quarterly board meeting to get that sign off for that thing that they're trying to do. They can get together on Zoom, and during lockdown, we met up as a board every Monday afternoon. Every Monday afternoon, we had a look at the figures, we had a look at the numbers, we had a look at how many leads we had coming in, and we were really on the mark of everything that we did there. And I still think organisations are working like that. Rather than them having 2-day board meeting once a quarter where they sign all this off, they're having these smaller half an hour meetings per week where they're getting this sort of stuff done. And have you seen a change across the sector from that?
Yeah, I think that's true. We've definitely seen shorter sales cycles. It depends on how you measure sales cycles. I often see the biggest mistake I see in people measuring sales cycles is they measure the things that close and say yes, and not the things that close and say yes in 6 months' time. So what you've got to remember is the people that haven't said yes yet are actually influencing your average, but you're not including them today because they haven't closed yet. Be careful on how you measure it is the first thing I'd say, though that's unrelated. I think there's sales timeframes and cycles are dictated by environment and by sales process. So I think if you look at business this year, particularly, sales teams have had more urgency because people have been going, I've got to sell, or my job's on the line, and I think that people have perhaps put more focus on, I've got to close deals, I've got to look after them, I've got to, we talked about deals are precious in lockdown, and I think that attitude has continued, that suddenly we've gone from the demand is high, we're all right, we can lose a deal here and there, to I've got to really, really focus, these deals are precious. So I think we've changed as salespeople. And I think it's important to recognize that, but also the environment has changed. So your technology example is a good one. People are more accessible internally, so they're maybe not waiting. I think that's fair, but also there's more of a requirement because there are more, again, those triggers. We've got to fix this problem because it's critical now. We're in a point where people are suffering. We're at a point where people are either, there's an opportunity for them and they're really going for it, or they're suffering in some areas or all areas of their business. So they're making quicker decisions because they have to.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. That's an opportunity, and it feeds into your. Actually, it's a really good time to be selling right now because you will get quick decisions because people can't afford to wait around and do nothing. Back to that status quo thing. We're not in that zone. We're in the things are really good or really bad for people, so they're going to make quick decisions as a result.
And we have, yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to jump onto a few of the comments. Joe Cheshire, I'd love for you to come and do some dialing here at Air. I promise I will take you up on that sometime if I come down to see you guys at Air. Edward, I think it might be easy to get hold of people. Many people are working from home at the moment, so no gatekeeper, so get straight through to mobile. Completely agree with that. I think it depends on organisations that you call in. Some of the gatekeepers I've got are definitely a lot harder. Gary Holmes, let's hear your best cold calling lines to start a conversation. I'll be completely honest, for me, it isn't about the line you use, it's the tone that you use when you're cold calling. When you're reaching out to somebody, it isn't necessarily what you say, it's having something to talk to them about that's going on within their world, something that's happening in there. So say, for example, Gary, if I was going to look at cold calling you today, first thing I'd do is I'd have a click through your LinkedIn profile, I'd see what is going on in your world, find out a bit more at St. Anne's Sheet Metal Company, what you're doing at the moment. I'm scrolling down at the moment on your feed and I can see that you're commenting on stuff, you're liking on stuff, I can see the Sales Geek stuff coming up on there. So I'd probably ask you, how did you get on the Sales Geek webinar? It might be one of the first things that I asked you. But again, for me, that is the tone. The biggest challenge that I think people see when they're cold calling is they don't sound like they should be speaking to that person. If you're going to cold call the managing director of a big organisation, you have to make sure you sound like you should be on that call to the person and not, hi, I'm sorry to call you, I'm really sorry to bother you, I know that your time's very valuable. So I think it's what you say rather than how, how you say it rather than what you say. To get onto that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think your best approach is always to do what you can to personalise if it's possible. Having said that, and I'll give a more specific answer than Jonathan because I do think I do have an opinion on this, funnily enough. So I think the two or three that you'll hear most regularly, and the things that you shouldn't. There are things that you shouldn't do. The worst one is, "Hey, how are you?" And I will argue that point until the day I die, that when you start a sales call with how are you, you do a number of things. You're disingenuous, you're starting on a negative, you don't care. If somebody turned around and went, I'm terrible, I've got shingles, you're not going to, you're going to get caught off guard because it doesn't happen, does it? The reality is that it's ticking a box and it's disingenuous, it's not honest and upfront, and it starts the conversation on I don't really care about you, but more importantly, you sound like a salesperson. And we want to differentiate our calls. So there's loads of reasons I can go on about that. I'll probably do an hour's talk on why not to start a sales call like that. And I think to Jonathan's point as well, is avoiding things like, oh, I'm sorry to phone you. I'm really, status is important in sales. So you've got to be important. You've got to be up there. You've got to sound assertive, all those sorts of things. But if you are going to go down the route of generic sales calls, i.e. I'm not going to research, I'm going to go through a list and I'm going to focus on quantity. In some business cases, that's the right thing to do. Not all, and it's not as regular, but it is the right thing to do. There are probably three options that you hear on the market right now. One is, and this is my favorite because it suits my style, to say, hi, Jonathan, we've not actually spoken before. I'm just hoping you can help me out for a moment. That word help is really important in that. And then you pause. I'm inviting you into the conversation. I'm saying to you, this is a two-way conversation. Join me in it if you want. Absolutely. It engages, it encourages trust, all that kind of stuff. The other is the one that's very famous off of Connect and Sell, which is this 27 seconds thing. So I know I'm an interruption. And what I like about that is it's honest, it's upfront. Like, I know I'm interrupting you. Can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? It's quite cliched, it's quite cheesy, but it does get a reaction and people kind of laugh at it and go, oh, that's quite good, it's quite interesting. But it gets you into two-way, and that's an interesting one. And the other one is where you just say, look, just want to be really honest with you. This is a cold call. Can I have a little bit of time just to tell you why I called? And again, it kind of catches people off guard. I don't like those two as much personally because it's just not my personality. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to go generic, I think those are your three viable options. Again, all of them are down to how you deliver them.
Absolutely. I think that third one's an interesting one. I'll be honest, I've never used that when I've gone out to people and gone, this is a cold call, do you want to hang up? I know Benjamin Dennehy talks around that quite a lot, around you should just be as upfront and as blunt as possible. But I think that probably brings me back to one of the things that we talked about on here about building rapport. And I think people often think when it comes to building rapport, you have to put this fake persona on as soon as you get talking to that person. We've probably all had that phone call where the person's far too jazzy at the other end, far too interested in your life when you know they're calling you to sell something. And I think rapport for me is definitely around tone, but it's also rapport is something that happens all the way through that sales call and that process that you build with that person to build that relationship. And I think we often mistake that thinking that rapport has to be this fancy thing that we deliver at the front that's sort of asking about, how are you? Yeah, how are you guys getting on at the moment, without being genuine about it. The only way I've ever found to build decent rapport on the start of a sales call is to talk to that person about something, as I mentioned before, something that is going on within their world. If you can mention a product line on their website, a launch, an event that they've been at, an award that they've won, these are all things that will open people up and you can start a conversation with them about. People hate being talked at, but they love talking about themselves. So as part of that opening, as part of that call, if you can get something from that person, get them talking around something, it makes the conversation so much easier.
100%. You know, you need people to like you as a human being, and you can't be liked if the only thing you do to them is sell to them. It's impossible. You have to shine through as a person first, and not a salesperson. The salesperson can come, and I think we open the door to that by engaging and building rapport. But you can't lead with the salesperson piece, which is absolutely the right mindset to be focused on things. That can be overdone, like I said, to overly enthusiastic. Yeah, it can be a bit creepy if you're like, oh, so you've got a spaniel and you live at 37 Western Street. You know, whoa, hang on a second. I didn't realise that. That's not my real address, just for the record. But I think done in the right way, that kind of stuff can really work. But equally, I think it's about reading people. Some people don't want that. You can sense that in a conversation. If you do that, it's too much. Some people just want to the point, straight up. Other people want a bit fluffier, a bit more engaging, a bit more interpersonal conversation. The one thing I would say is that when we are selling, the most powerful tool that I use in what I teach and what I learned in my early days of sales is to take out the pressure of getting a yes being the right outcome all the time. So when I'm selling, I make my objective is to find the truth, to find whether there's a good fit between what they're doing, what I have to offer, and whether there's a good fit there. And the moment I realize that on some calls that I make, the right outcome is no, and on other calls the right outcome is not now, and on other calls the right outcome is actually I don't want to work with this person. Absolutely. Is the moment it takes the pressure off. I have to get a yes from this conversation, and I stop acting like a salesperson. I stop behaving like a salesperson, and I become genuinely inquisitive, because most people in sales like people, otherwise why do they work in sales? So just make your focus to genuinely enjoy talking to that person, getting to know them, engaging with them on a level that they're comfortable with. And make your objective to do that, and then they'll and to get them to open up to you and give you the truth, give you the real information, because with that truth you can make a decision as to whether selling to them is the right thing to do or not. You start a sales call by not selling. You start a sales call by engaging, uncovering whether there's an opportunity, qualifying, all those things we talk about, and then you go into sales mode if there's an opportunity and a qualification and a fit. We call it a fit. But if there's not a fit, every moment you spend selling is a waste of time, because they're not qualified. They can't buy from you. They're not in the right mode. They're locked in a contract for 5 years, whatever it might be. So you're wasting your time and you're becoming ineffective. So I think flipping that mindset to actually, whilst my job is sales, my end goal of each conversation is to get to the truth, is to uncover the truth and build engagement. The sales piece comes later.
Absolutely. I think that qualification piece of qualifying people out is something that we don't often talk about in sales. It should be about qualifying in, but it's just as important to get that no. Going back to what we're talking about around time as a salesperson is your most valuable asset. Where you spend that time, what you're going to do with it, dictates where your results are going to come from, what you're going to get as results. And I think that I see this so many times. You'll be looking at someone's pipeline or going through it with them, and you'll realise that maybe 50% of that is never going to convert. They don't want to take those figures out there, but they've not asked those difficult questions to qualify that person out. One question that we teach and that we use to guys, for any of you lot listening that are wondering about qualification, ask the client, realistically, if this deal didn't go ahead, what would the reason be for that? So this isn't on your first call. This is normally when you've either got to the end of your first call, you're on your second call with them and you've done your proposal. But asking that person, not like, why is this going to go ahead? Optimistic, we want to be. But ask them, if for any reason we get a week down the line and this hasn't gone ahead and you guys say we can't do this, what are the most likely reasons for that? What you're doing there is you're welcoming those objections from that person. It gives you a chance to actually handle them, but it also gives you a chance to go, oh, we can't get over that. We've just started doing an RFP for a client and we've gone through one of their processes. Before I've got to quoting, before anything else, they've sent us the RFP and they've sent over some information with it, and we realise we can't deal with that client because of something within it. If we hadn't have asked that question and got all that procurement information beforehand to go through, I'd have still been wasting my time today on that. So how do you guys qualify? Well, how do you personally qualify out, Owen? Because you must get quite a lot of sales, well, must get a lot of people calling you. What's the best qualifying outline you've got?
Yeah, do you know, again, it's about being upfront and honest, and being open that your objective is not to sell to everybody. So let's just look at an inbound lead coming through our website. Statistically, we know that as of last week, when I last checked the reports, 46.5% of inbound inquiries that come to us are qualified. So we're prepared to spend time on them. That means that over half aren't. And that's typically because they're either looking for something we don't do, they're looking for something that we can't help with, and an area we can't help with. They can't spend the money they need to invest to make this work and do it properly. You know, they're working with a budget that doesn't fit for us, and where we can't put a hand on heart and say, look, we can help you. So I think it's about, first and foremost, what questions do you ask? I think you get a sniff, and the first question I will ask is, so don't get me wrong, if I don't know, BT phoned me, I probably wouldn't answer this question because I know the answer already. But if a brand new startup and they make an inquiry via the website, we're a startup, we're looking for some sales support, first thing I'll say is, great, just so that you know, the level of investment you're going to need to put into this is something like this, this, and this as a minimum. Can I just check that's going to make sense for you? Because I want to respect yours and my time. And I'm happy to have this conversation. So it puts you in the driving seat. It shows that there's a value to what you do. And it's, you know, to a degree, it could come across as a confidence. Some people could argue an arrogance. I think if done, it's like anything, if done in the right way, actually, I could spend a 45-minute conversation with you, which is our average talk time on an inbound lead, where there's an opportunity, there's a lot of complexity in our sale, or I could save you that energy and effort up front. Absolutely. And all it takes is for them to go, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Or 9 times out of 10, and you do get the odd liar who wants to save face, but 9 times out of 10, people will go, do you know what? Whoa, that's a lot of money. There's no way I could spend that. So great. Well, look, do you want me to refer you to somebody who might be able to help you, who can do something different, or can I make a recommendation around this, that, and the other, or maybe look at that? And they come off the call, and those people turn into fans. They turn into referrers. They turn into people that connect with you on LinkedIn and like your content because you've helped them and you've been honest with them. And because my objective wasn't to sell to them, my objective was to respect both of our times and be honest and upfront. So I think it all comes down to, again, that what's your mindset? How do you respect your own time and the time of the people you're speaking to?
Absolutely love that. One thing that I think we see a lot of people making mistakes on, but is that proposing the cost and doing that at the very end of the process, building up to it. And Richard, I know Richard's just tuned in, my business partner, he talks a lot about, people always say, cost is only an issue in the absence of value. We disagree with. We think cost is sometimes an issue in the absence of money. If you don't have the money, we can create all the value that we want, unless you're willing to convince that person to go finance it, which, you know, is a completely different ball game and normally the wrong thing to do. It's, if the person doesn't have the money, they don't have the money for it. And bringing that up at the start of the process rather than at the end and building up to it just helps you do that qualification piece so much. If they haven't got the money at the start of it, the odds are they're not going to have the money at the end of it. And I suppose that leads me on, I'm just conscious of time, Owen, but leads me on to the final thing that I really wanted to just talk through with you. But he's all talking around presentation of proposals and how we're putting things in front of people, because for me, the sales process is the most important part of most businesses. And the reason that I say that is if we can't get through that sales process effectively and give the client the information that they need out of it, we never get any revenue. The business doesn't start turning is the biggest challenge that I think we see. For us personally, I mean, we've changed a lot around our sales processes recently. We're using Zoom a heck of a lot more, which is great because it means that we can do more outbound stuff. I can get 6-7 meetings in a day rather than 3 or 4 if we were driving around. But I think the biggest thing that we've implemented recently is an actual proposal system that we can put in. We send out to clients, they can look through it and can review it. We can see what they're looking at it, and it gives us a lot of information. What do you think is the biggest challenges that you see with people when it comes to actually presenting that solution and putting that proposal forward? Because I often find it's one of two sides. They'll talk too much and present very little, as in send over a 1-page PDF, or they talk very little and go, yeah, let me take your email address, and send out this absolute essay to people, which nobody's ever going to read through, nobody's ever going to look at. it's made a massive difference to our closing rates, definitely huge difference to our closing rates, putting in a different solution for that. And if anyone's interested in that, get in contact with me and I'll give you a bit more information as to what that is. But how do you guys go about presenting the solution to the client?
Yeah, some really interesting points there. I think first and foremost, if you take the approach of short conversation and loads of information by email, you're not a salesperson, right? That's just fact, right? That's customer service followed by hoping that your proposal will do all the hard work for you. Great, but that's not sales.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. I love things I know you guys use. I think better proposals, a good CRM, like a HubSpot will give you this if you are, which is our preferred platform. If you're sending out proposals, doesn't matter what format, if you send them via email, then it will give you tracking around that. Timing's everything in sales. So whatever it looks like, the ability to know when they open it and when they're engaging with it gives you the ability to phone them at that point in time. And I think that's a really good sales technique that we absolutely love. Hey, that person's in the proposal. What happens if I give them a call right now and just say, have you got any questions? It's a really nice way of working versus the 3 other times I could have got them and they were in meetings. So yeah, data information really helps in that process. In terms of the presentation itself, look, I think proposals are really interesting because there's no right for everybody. Some people, if you're like me, will read top line, the price, and move on. And I'll rely on everything you told for me because I absorb information verbally and through conversation. I can't sit and read a 10-page document without getting distracted because that's who I am. Other people want the detail. I think you need to play to all audiences. So if you've got a 1-page proposal, you're going to be missing opportunities. Have the detail. What I like doing is pulling out the bits that I think that person wants to know most based on the conversation I've had with them, plonking that in the email front and center. And I'll say to people, if you're detail focused, you'll like to read this document. If you're not, I put the 3 points that I think are most important to you in this email. And there you go. And I'm kind of doing the job for them. And I think it's like anything. You make people's life easier that way. You allow them to buy in the way that you think they're going to want to buy, and you play to your strengths in that. There is no one size fits all in sales, so you have to adapt. And again, smart salespeople do that. They make it easy for you to buy. Video is a great way to send a proposal with a video talking through. I've seen other people do that where it's like a 45-second video, save you reading through these 10 pages. I've talked you through the 3 points that are really important to you. And these things, they're good options. People can choose to not use them, but if they're not there, they have to digest the information in one way. And however million people that are in the UK market that could buy from you can't digest information all in the same way. So I think it's just important to explore and to just interpret the conversation. But for me, the proposal is secondary to the quality of the conversation that you have. People will buy from your conversation, how consultative you are, how much challenging you put into that conversation. Do you question why they're doing things? Do you try to truly understand it? Do you make recommendations? Are you the expert? That they'll take with them. The proposal, it could be an average proposal with the right conversation. They'll come back and ask questions and give you a chance. The other way around, your conversation is average, they won't even read your proposal. It doesn't matter.
So guys, we're going to be wrapping up in about 5 minutes. I'm monitoring the chats here on LinkedIn and on the Sales Geek website. If you guys have got any questions, anything that you want to quiz me or Owen on for the next 5-10 minutes, give us a shout. I suppose final thing I just wanted to mention there, Owen, but video for us has been an absolute game changer. When we're sending out that proposal, sending that 2-3 minute videos out. For me personally, if you send me a document, I'll never read it. I just won't. If you send me out that 3-minute video, I love watching videos. It gives me a bit of an idea of personality. One of the reach out tools that we found has been really useful, and I did a bit of a test on this a couple of months ago, but was the LinkedIn feature where you've got your message function, but you've got your voice note function. And I sent out 10 completely cold messages. They were personalised. They mentioned something about what that person was doing, a congratulations, or to try and start that conversation, versus sending out 10 voice notes. I think when it came to responses from the messages, I got 3 responses from the messages. This was in like a week period. But almost every person responded to the voice note. It was almost the same sort of message. But again, for me, I think tech is making it actually as a prospecting tool. If you're using it smarter, LinkedIn is a heck of a lot easier now to start getting that interaction with. And if someone was going to sell to you, you're going to end up with a load of salespeople ringing you here because they're all listening on. But if someone was going to sell to you, what for you personally would your perfect method of communication be? CEO of a big organisation, if someone was going to try to catch you and just catch your attention, how could they go about doing that?
So the key word is differentiation. So differentiate yourself. Probably channel wise, it doesn't matter too much, but it's about standing out. So to give you some understanding, I probably get somewhere between 20 and 30 in-mails a day on LinkedIn. So if you send me a written thing with 3 paragraphs in, I ain't reading it. That's just the reality.
10 of those are normally just from me.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just always in the ear.
How you doing?
All right, Jonathan, I'll buy some. I think so. Yeah, it's about standing out, and actually, to a degree, there's an element of luck because I might not get an email, and you might be the only one on the day. I think generic text-based emails go in the bin 9 times out of 10. The best way to engage me is phone call because it's two-way. I can have a conversation with you, and I always tend to entertain sales calls. The hardest thing is getting me on the phone in the first place because I'm back-to-back in meetings. I've got a team to run, that sort of stuff. But if you get me, I'll give you time, I'll give you attention, and I'll let you have a pitch. Mainly because it's market research for me. I want to hear how other people are approaching it, and see if there's anything that we can learn from or implement or poach good staff or whatever it might be. But I think whatever it is, sales is about differentiating yourself because every senior decision maker in a business gets at least 10 approaches a week, probably more like tens or hundreds if they're the right sort of people. And if you aren't in the top 1, 2, 3 in terms of standing out, then it doesn't matter how good your offering is, it's not going to get noticed because we're human. We don't have the capacity to respond to every single one, even if we wanted to and we had the desire to. So differentiate yourself one way or another. One way to do that is by using multiple channels. If I see, hang on, it's a bit like marketing, isn't it? There's somebody, they sent me a LinkedIn, an email, a video, a connection request, they phoned me all in the same day. There's a lot of noise there. I'll respect the persistence. I'll respect the effort, and you're more likely to get me than if you send me a lazy 2-line email with a PDF that you send to everybody. Yeah, I get this from lead generation companies. They clearly haven't even looked at what we do. Don't expect a response because you haven't earned it. But if you earn the right to a response, and I had one the other day, somebody sent me 2 videos in the space of 2 days, and I went back to him and said, "Good on you. Good on you for doing it. Keep up the persistence. I'm not going to buy from you, I don't think, but actually, keep it up because you're giving sales a good name and you're giving yourself a better chance of getting noticed." So yeah, differentiate yourself. You can do that in an array of ways, but always be focused on how do I stand out? How do I differentiate myself?
I always love looking at the LinkedIn stuff at the moment. Like you said, LinkedIn is just so busy at the moment, and a lot of people are using bots on it. There's a way to do this. If you put an emoji after your name, when it comes up, you can tell if they've just copied and pasted it or the bot's copied and pasted it out. It's a really easy one to do there. But I always love counting how many times those messages say I, we, or me in them. Because they always come through and go, "Hi, I'm such a body, and we do this. And if you'd like to book a meeting with me, type this in." And it always just amazes me running through those. They never talk about you, never talk about your issues. David has just put a question up there. What are your thoughts and tips around how you keep momentum going with a potential qualified client who's become responsive after the initial 1 or 2 meetings? Really good question. Do you want to go first on that one, Owen, or do you want me to say?
Sure. 2 things. So one is we have to accept it in sales. There's an element of you need to be persistent. That never give up mentality is true. I had somebody the other day. One of my sales directors said to me, "I've literally contacted this person. This is the 40th day in a row. It was quite a big opportunity, really hot. 40th day in a row, I've contacted him via some channel." And he came back and he said, "Good on you. Let's talk again. Let's pick this back up." And look, I think there's an element of probably at day 30, I'd have gone, "Mate, are you sure you want to be spending your time doing this?" But, there's a learning there at least. So I think persistence is key. Adding value. So those touch points can't be, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?" It needs to be, "Hey, I was thinking about you." And I think less and personalized is more with that. So I often do this thing where I'll drop in a video, a voice memo, an email, say, "Hey, I was thinking about you. I've got this new idea as to how we could approach the market, or I've just found this new data source that I think would be really good for your account, or I was talking to a client in your industry who's doing this, this, and this, and I learned that, and I thought it might be useful for you." I'm adding value and I'm educating versus, "Are you ready to buy from me yet? Are you ready to buy from me yet?" Which is, I think, what most salespeople do. And I don't think that ever prompts a response. So I think that persistence and consistency and understanding that you have to earn the right to a conversation sometimes, and you have to be patient. And just because they're not, I'm a buyer, I do it. I might go missing for 2 weeks. It's not because I don't want to buy from you. It's not because I don't like what you have to offer. It's just that I've got a priority list. And you were there when we were talking last time, but now you're here because loads of things have come on top. You have to earn the right to be back up here, or wait your turn to get back up there, because again, we only have so much capacity. So personalize, add value, educate, make it not about you, make it about them. Can I educate them? Can I give them some value in the conversation? Not, are you ready? Are you ready? And sometimes just be patient and be persistent.
And I think a key one for me, I mean, we always, at some point in the process, we all lose control every now and again of whatever's happening with that thing. It does happen. But one of the things I'd say here, David, prevention is always better than the cure. So if you can prevent that happening, I always look at any meetings, anyone that I've got in our CRM, if I don't have a next step in their diary and in my diary, I've lost control of it. It's like playing tennis. Once you've hit that ball over, it's onto that other person to hit it back, and you might be stuck there a while going, I was really enjoying this game of tennis. Make sure they know when they're supposed to be hitting it back. Get that invite in your diary, whether it's a Zoom call, a phone call, but make sure it's in your diary and in theirs. At the end of the meeting, send them that calendar invite with some outcomes on for what you're going to do and for what they're going to do. And I know for the first or second meeting you mentioned here, they've come unresponsive after the initial 1 or 2 meetings. We used to have a thing in conferences and exhibitions that we used to have a blowout email. And this was when you have tried every form of communication to try and get in contact with that client and you couldn't, whether it was a 30, 40 day, however long that was. When you got to the stage and you went, I might have to walk away from this, we always used to send an email that would say, hi, such your body, I've tried to get hold of you a couple of times, I'm really struggling. Realistically, is this still something you want to go ahead with? I don't want to be a pain in your backside and continue to keep chasing you. Giving the client at that point the chance to walk away from it, as long as you've done everything that you need to up to that point, is often a good thing because you can pull it out of your pipeline and stop chasing them, but you'll almost always provoke a response from them from that. They'll either come back and go, oh no, we do want to still do it, I'm really sorry, we've had so much on, or they'll go, no, actually something's changed at our side, which means you can either re-diarise and contact that person again, or you can walk away and then you've got some time back to go and spend on other things. Guys,
the thing I'd say, Jonathan, is about differentiating that. So I think it's very easy to send a generic, I can't get hold of you email. Again, in any part of the process, it's about differentiation. So I call it the stalker email. My email that goes out is, I feel like a stalker and somebody's going to call the police on me quickly if I keep hanging outside your office. But, there's something with a bit of humour, a bit of light touch, something that makes somebody go, oh, that's a different email. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's something that's not just, hey, I've tried you 6 times in the last week, but you're not coming back to me. Should I just bin this opportunity? That's just generic. You're not earning the right to a response necessarily. So at every stage, I think it's not just about what you do, again, back to how you do it, differentiate yourself. Thinking about how do I stand out from the other 38 emails this person had in the last hour.
I was just trying to pull up a picture when I was when I joined at the university and I took the sales director's job there. They said we've got a specific type of message that we send, and it was just that photo of a skeleton on the phone, and they said we just put at the top me trying to get in contact with you. I thought that was a great one.
Love it.
You've got to be careful who you send that to. We did get a few people who sort of went, excuse me. But yeah, he always got a response back. Well, listen, we'll wrap that up there. A massive thank you for coming on today. I always enjoy doing podcast webinars with you. We've recorded this one as well, so I'll fire the copy over from that. But really appreciate you taking the time out to come and speak with us all today.
Thanks for having us.
Brilliant. Right, guys, well, going to wrap that up for today. If you've got any questions for Owen, you want to find Owen, Owen's obviously tagged in this as well, but if you want to follow Owen, you'll find him on LinkedIn under Air Marketing Group under Owen Richards, so please make sure you follow Owen. He puts out some phenomenal sales content. I constantly keep looking at what Owen's doing and going, I need to up my sales game here. He's beating me on LinkedIn again and constantly looking at what I'm doing. But I hope you guys have took a lot from that as well. The recording for this will be up on the Sales Geek Hub, so I will get that up over the next couple of days for you. But I hope you've really enjoyed that. Enjoy the rest of your day. Keep prospecting. Keep getting those calls out there, keep the faith, and it'll all come in. Speak to you soon, guys.